Hey everyone, I'm Robert. In this video, I want to share some new updates for Macrowhisper, my free and open source app for doing voice automations with Superwhisper. Everything I will show you here works with a free version of Superwhisper because we will only be using its transcription capabilities, not any of the AI processing features. Macrowhisper can do a lot of powerful things, but today I want to focus on its new context capture features through the use of placeholders. These new placeholders work with all sorts of actions, including shortcuts and scripts, but to keep this video practical, I am going to show you how to use them with URLs. I want to give you a few ideas and possible use cases. Stick around to the end, and I will also show you an Alfred workflow that I have made to get even more control over Macrowhisper. As you might remember from a recent video, URL actions are what allows me to connect Superwhisper to Alter. Several of you guys reached out asking me how did I set this up, and just to show you what I'm referring to, let me demonstrate this again. If I have an email or something on my screen, I can quickly respond. Thank you, right now I'm not interested. I see my response in Alter's pop-up window, and I told you that being able to use this type of automation outside of Superwhisper and in a chat interface can give you some more flexibility. Make it sound more friendly and say that I can consider it if she emails me next week. In a moment, I will tell you how this works, but the cool thing here is that with recent updates to Macrowhisper, you are not limited to using Alter for this kind of quick requests that include some of your window context. Now, it's possible to do something similar with a bunch of other apps or websites. Basically, anything that you can connect with via shortcuts or URLs. For example, let's use the official ChatGPT website. I will go to a PDF, I will select some text, and can you explain this to me in simple words? The website opens with my request, and it includes the text that I selected. It saves you from having to copy, open the website, and paste. Well, you can do more stuff with this. You can be within a note on your favorite text editor, and you don't even have to select anything here. Hey, I am trying to write this video script, but I'm running out of ideas. Can you help me here? How should I continue? Again, this is sent to the website of ChatGPT, where I am presented with some ideas, and I can even go back and forth using the original text that I sent as context. And you may be thinking, isn't this already built in Superwhisper itself? Well, it is not quite the same. Superwhisper does have some context capture capabilities, it's true. I have another video covering this in detail. The limitation is that these context features are only available when you use Superwhisper's AI processing. For a very long time, I was actually totally okay with this limitation, and I was using Superwhisper's AI for literally everything. Unfortunately, there's been some recent updates to the whole interface and behavior of the app that have made it harder for me to use this amazing dictation app in some of the ways as I was doing before. For example, if your prompts are on the longer side like mine, you have to do lots of scrolling to finally get to the point where you can select your model. But no, wait, this just opens a side menu where you have to click one more time to see another menu. This design to me is just so crowded and requires so much clicking and scrolling. And to get to some other useful settings, I still need to scroll some more through my examples. Basically, every time I want to change something, even if it's a little thing, it's quite a frustrating experience diving into this new settings panel. Another thing is that one of my favorite Superwhisper features was a mini recording window that held my response and allowed me to grab pieces of text that I could copy and paste anywhere. It used to be that you had to close it manually by pressing escape, but now I click anywhere by accident and the window with my result is gone. Context capture when reprocessing dictations in Superwhisper is no longer working. I used to have about 20 Superwhisper modes, but with the current interface, you can only switch between 9. Yes, there's workarounds, and it's just minor things, really. And I have given feedback about them, but I think that the way I have been using the app all this time is actually quite unique, and it seems like no one else is affected. I have tried a lot of other similar tools, and I still love Superwhisper. On Mac specifically, I still think that this is at the very top right now when it comes to AI dictation. If you pair it with Macrowhisper for automation, you can do things I haven't seen any other dictation app implement. Lately though, and because of some of these changes that I've been telling you, I have been looking for ways to send my Superwhisper's dictation results to other tools that can handle certain jobs better. And that is why these new context features I have implemented in Macrowhisper are very special and useful for this specific case. If you get the hang of this, it can save you a lot of time and open up some cool new possibilities. Before diving deeper, let me tell you a few important things. I am not covering the installation steps here. You can learn all about that in a previous video that I will link in the description. But something you must know is that if you installed Macrowhisper through Homebrew, each new version of the app goes to a separate version-specific folder. This is just the way Homebrew works. So even though the previous version is completely removed whenever you update, macOS treats the updated app as if it was totally new, because accessibility permissions are connected to the application's path. I just wanted to mention this because it's one minor downside of using Homebrew for installation, and I have had several users contact me asking about why they have multiple accessibility entries or why their computer asks for permissions after each update. This is the reason. You can always select the previous entries on your settings panel and remove them with the minus button here at the bottom. If this becomes a hassle, and I completely understand, you can instead use the script method I provided in the documentation to install Macrowhisper. That way, every new update will always go to the same path, and you will only need to grant permissions once. Second thing I wanted to mention, if you install the latest version of Macrowhisper and restart the service, at the top of your configuration file, you will see a reference to a JSON schema file. This is very helpful because if you are editing your configuration file in something like VS Code, Cursor, or similar apps, there's tooltips that explain each field's purpose whenever you hover around. One more quick note. Over on GitHub, you will find two sample configuration files. One is a simple one, the one that I was using early on, and I think it's a great place to start for every user, but the other one is my current setup, which is more advanced. I will drop the link in the description of this video, but please don't just copy-paste this configuration into your machine. It's customized for my system, but I wanted to share it for you guys to have as a reference. You can look through it, borrow ideas, and adapt what makes sense for your own setup. This is my actual configuration, so you can expect it to keep changing over time. With that being said, let's talk about URL actions in Macrowhisper. Let me start with a clean configuration file. If you have just installed Macrowhisper, you can open terminal, then type reveal config, and you will find something that looks like this. Let's add one URL action. I also do this through terminal. I want to guide you from basic, and little by little we will start introducing more complexity, okay? So let's add Google website as an action, nothing else. And for trigger, in this example, let's use a phrase. So we go to trigger voice and let's type testing. Every time that I start my dictation with the word testing, this website will open. Let's run it. Testing 1, 2, 3. We see that Google opened, but this is just the main page. Let's search something really quickly. Now I will grab the entire URL from this search page, go back to the configuration, and I will paste it in the action field. This is a huge URL, but we only want the first part. Depending on the website that you plan to use here, you may be able to do the same. If you plan to use this with an app, you need to check the documentation to see if it supports a URL scheme. With this, we can already start sending the results of our dictation to Google. For this kind of web search, I don't need LLM processing, so I will normally use the simple result placeholder. So let's insert that here and repeat the last test. Testing 1, 2, 3. And now this opened up using my dictation as the search parameters. Perfect. My default browser is Arc, but we also have this option of choosing another application for this action. So if I type Safari, testing 1, 2, 3, then it will open my selected browser. I have encountered a few websites that do not like that you insert a period in your search, like this one that we see here. And that is where the Regex replacements feature comes in very handy. Regex replacements is a whole other beast by itself, and I know just the very basic patterns. Whenever I need something, I often ask AI about this, but let's say that I want to remove the last period in my placeholder. Then it will look like this. A double pipe indicates that I want to do a regex replacement. The first part finds the last period, and one more double pipe means replace with, and we will leave it blank. Let's do this one more time. Testing 1, 2, 3. As you can see, there's no more period at the end. Understanding the basics of how regex replacements work in placeholders will be very useful later when we start playing with some of the new context placeholders. But before we get into that, I think this is enough to explain to you how I set up some of my Alter actions. In Alter, you have to go to your action editor. Here we have these tabs for the system prompt and the user prompt that will be sent to AI. Something very useful here is that we have placeholders for different kinds of context types. This is the action that I showed you at the beginning of the video. I use this to help me answer emails or messages. I inserted the window content placeholder here. This will get the content from my front app, but there's another important element here. With Alter, you have the option to add something called parameters, which are fields where the user can customize everything anytime that the action will be triggered. In this case, where I want my dictated message to appear as part of the user prompt, let's add one input parameter. Here we use it as if it was any other placeholder. I type input, and down here we add the parameter. We select text area and give it the name input. I will also use input for the label. Let me give this action the keyboard shortcut Option G, and I do that in the General tab. If I press it, you can see this text box where I can type anything, and this will expand in that input placeholder that I added in my user prompt. I can test it. Hey John, how about meeting next week? In this case, my front application doesn't include any incoming email or messages, so the result will be a little bit more generic, but I wanted you to see the parameter in action. What allows us to do a lot more is that we can trigger this with URLs. I will copy the URL from my action. Now I will go to my configuration of Macrowhisper, and I will replace that Google URL that we were testing before. Now you can see there's this place for me to add content to that input parameter directly. In this case, I simply add the result placeholder as before. I added Safari as my application to open this earlier, so let's remove it to avoid issues. And there's another useful setting here. Something I found out when I was setting this up is that when I trigger a URL, the other application that opens will take the focus away from my current window. Alter was struggling to catch the content from my window because the focus would be taken away too soon. So I implemented this open background option that we can set to true to prevent that. The action is ready. Right now, remember that the trigger for this action is the word testing, so I will use it. I am on a very simple voice-only mode with Superwhisper. Let's go to one email so that you can see how the Alter placeholder will grab content and respond accordingly. Testing. This sounds awesome. Thank you so much. I am really looking forward to check this out. Macrowhisper automatically removes the trigger phrase from the beginning. And by the way, Alter does not show all of the other information that is being sent to AI. It only shows your input parameter. But I have done a lot of testing and I know for a fact that this works. What doesn't really work reliably is some of the other placeholders like selected text. Selected text is important because, yes, being able to send all your window content is good, but sometimes you are giving too much information to AI that may confuse it. And if you can point out something more specific, the results you get may be better. And this is where I started experimenting, and I was very excited when I figured out that I was able to bring some context features within Macrowhisper itself. The way that I have implemented context capture is pretty much the same way that it works with Superwhisper. The great thing here is that you can use these context features in voice-only modes without AI processing. So it can be much faster and you can send your context anywhere. Shortcuts, scripts, URLs. As I mentioned before, I have an entire other video covering how context for Superwhisper works, but in summary, the whole process looks like this. First, there is a dictation process. Then there is a transcription process. And then there is some additional processing before you get the result. In Superwhisper, in this additional processing step, it's where AI processing happens. But in Macrowhisper, regardless of whether your dictation has AI processing or not, what happens here is those regex replacements, the expanding of your placeholders, the detection of your trigger, and whatever else needs to be prepared for your action to execute. Remember, we are talking Macrowhisper here, which means that context capture can work even on voice-only modes without LLM. The clipboard can be captured a couple of seconds before your dictation begins or anytime during your dictation. Selected text is captured exactly the moment that you start your dictation, and application context is captured the moment that this processing is done. It is important to mention that these context capture features that I have implemented will only be part of your Macrowhisper actions if you use their specific placeholders. You don't have to worry about the app sending any information anywhere without your permission. Another thing to know is that the app context does not behave the same as in Alter. Alter captures everything from your front window. That is why I was able to do that example at the beginning of the video where I opened my email and dictated an answer right away. Currently, app context in Macrowhisper only captures the name of your front app, the title of the window, and the content of your active input field. This includes content if you are in a note or text editors. I find this method lighter and more predictable, especially for a utility like Macrowhisper. Clipboard and selected text context should still have you covered for most other cases. Let me show you how this looks in action. Let's go back to the Google URL. Now I will use the selected text placeholder. And as trigger, let's switch it to Google this. So now I can select any text and say, Google this. This is pure automation, no AI post-processing at all. And all of this here starts to get even more powerful when we start to use URLs to send selected text to other apps or other AI websites. For example, let's insert the base URL for ChatGPT. And let me use that same selected text placeholder. But the placeholder by itself is not really that useful. AI will receive my selected text, but it will not know what to do with it. We need to give it some instructions. This is a good moment to explain something really important that's happening in the background. It's called URL encoding, and it's what allows browsers to open links without them breaking. There's characters like spaces or other special symbols that are not allowed because they can confuse the browser. So URL encoding solves this by swapping those characters out for a special code that browsers do understand. Macrowhisper handles all of this automatically for placeholder content. This is so you don't have to worry about your text breaking the link. But if I start to insert some text with spaces here outside of my placeholder, well, this will break the URL and it may not run or may give me an error. The solution here to add extra text or instructions that you can send in URL actions is to use regex replacements. Yes, that same feature that we used before to remove the period at the end of the string. Any replacements that you do within your placeholders will be URL encoded before triggering the action. And by the way, this is specific to URL actions. For shortcuts or scripts, you may not need this, but it's still useful to know. It is not as scary as it sounds, I promise. You can insert exactly what I will show you here. We start with the double pipe, then we insert this. This means that I want to capture all the content of my original placeholder. Now, I will add another 2 pipes. Remember, this is what indicates that the replacement is coming up next. And now we have so much flexibility because we can use this symbol together with number 1, and this will be expanded to the original content of our placeholder. Are you following? I can insert text here without being afraid of breaking the URL because I am still within those curly brackets. So I can type. Please explain the following. Right now, I don't want to have this phrase as a trigger down here. Instead, I will set this as my active action so that I don't have to worry about what I dictate. Let me select something. This is me running the action. This starts to become more useful, right? But it still does not have the content of my dictation. So let's add our result placeholder back in there. Something that I want to briefly cover here is how you can start structuring your messages to include different context types. It is not my intention to give you an entire prompt engineering class, but generally something that does help a lot with AI is trying to be extra clear. And something that I personally like to use for this is XML tags. I don't want AI to receive my request as a single block of text where I am mixing my instruction with whatever I have selected, my clipboard context and my application context all together. No. So let's organize this. I go inside my result placeholder and I will start the regex replacement. I want to capture the entire content of my placeholder just as I did with selected text. So I will just copy and paste from the other placeholder. Now let me insert one opening XML tag that will say user message. After this, I want to insert a line break. Since we are editing a JSON configuration file, I have to insert line breaks like this with a \n. Now we insert this symbol that represents our placeholder's content. I add another line break and I close the same XML tag. Now let's give that same format to our selected text placeholder. I want to start with a double line break just to make everything look nice and clean. This tag will be called selected text. I make sure that I also insert line breaks before and after this symbol, and I add a closing tag. So this is already good enough. I can dictate something and my request will go cleanly formatted to ChatGPT together with whatever text I have selected. But since I'm already here, let's go ahead and also add the clipboard context placeholder. It's pretty simple because I already got all the elements here. I just copy and paste the previous one. I change the name to clipboard context. And I will rename those XML tags. That's it. Easy peasy. This action is already packed with versatility, guys. Whenever you use it, you don't have to feel forced to select text or to copy something because If those placeholders are empty, then they will not be included in your request. Let me show you what I mean. Hi, this is a quick test. We can see that my user message with my XML tags is the only thing that was sent. That's great. Let's test our context placeholders. Remember, I have to make sure that I have some selected text the moment that I start dictating, and during my dictation, I will go and copy something. I need you to look at my selected text and give it the same format that you see in my clipboard context. Just give me the result without any explanations. Awesome. We can see the clear separation in my instructions, the selected text, and the clipboard context. AI had no trouble understanding what I was asking. If you add the app context placeholder in the same way, the content of your active note, if you are in a text editor, will be sent together with your request. That is what you saw at the beginning of the video. But there's something else that I want to show you here. When I was building these context features in Macrowhisper, I had one idea. How about clipboard stacking? Let me go back to the image that I showed you before. The default behavior is that if you copy multiple things during your dictation or during this buffer period of time, which, by the way, is also customizable in the configuration, only the last one will be used. But with clipboard stacking active, you are allowing all of the multiple pieces of text that you copy here to be included in your clipboard context placeholder. Let's go to the default section of our configuration in Macrowhisper. Let's set clipboard stacking to true. I will not select anything this time. I will start copying content when I begin dictating. Hey, I want you to look at the clipboard context that I'm giving you and come up with an outline where all of these pieces are connected in some way. I'm just looking for inspiration so that I can start writing an article with all of this. Please be creative. Look at this. Everything is sent and clearly separated with their own XML tags that are added automatically. Clipboard context 1, clipboard context 2, and so on. You can really get creative with this. For example, in your action, you could even remove your result placeholder and simply include the instruction typed with your clipboard context placeholder. Let's say summarize my clipboard, and that way you could create your own sort of presets that you can reuse. You could use the Superwhisper dictation as one open session where you can be copying stuff and send that to your same instruction without caring about what you dictate. Or you could go up here and expand the buffer time for your clipboard capture to 10 or 15 seconds. And then maybe you don't even need to dictate anything. There really is so much you can do here. You have probably heard a lot about prompt engineering and the importance of learning how to communicate with AI. The truth is, AI is advancing so quickly that it understands our natural language better with each update. But I have come across another concept that I think is extremely relevant, and this is context engineering. This is less about the instruction itself and more about all the background or extra information you provide. This is becoming more important as the context windows of AI models get really big. Your instructions might be perfectly clear and the AI might understand what you want. However, if you can give relevant context, the quality of your results improves tremendously. With this in mind, I think that these new context features of Macrowhisper can be really useful if you find a way to incorporate them to your workflow. It can save you so much time that would otherwise be spent round-tripping between apps to copy and paste stuff. Of course, these new placeholders are still limited to text only, but for some tasks, it can still be very useful. If you add Superwhisper's AI on top of this, it could also give you some other options when triggering URLs. This, plus everything else you can do with shortcuts or script actions, well, I think it will just come down to your own creativity. Before I wrap up this video, I want to mention something I didn't cover but may still be useful. If you start creating many different actions and you start setting up different triggers, whether it's for apps or modes or keywords and phrases, you'll probably notice the same thing that I did. Pretty soon, I found myself with a growing list of phrases to remember, or I was having to create new Superwhisper modes for every action that I wanted to trigger. It can get out of control. So what I ended up doing was making an Alfred workflow. It's in the same GitHub repository as Macrowhisper. I kept it as straightforward as possible. Basically, you can filter all your actions right from Alfred's bar. No need to remember any special phrases or if you designed your action to run with a specific mode or not. If you type add, you can even filter by action type. So if I select anything from here, it will immediately start my dictation and trigger the action with it. Let's say that I want to save my dictation as a text file on my desktop. This is a shell type of action, which I didn't cover in this video, but I'm just trying to show you how this trigger method works. Alfred is one of my most used apps. Then I open my desktop and there's my created file. You can continue using all of your triggers as normal. This is just one extra option for quick execution. And if you don't have Alfred in that same page, there's an explanation on how to do this with the CLI. So you can set it with other automation apps if you want. I know some of the things I showed you here may still be a bit overwhelming. When I started writing the script for this video, my plan was to make it about 5 or 6 minutes. I guess maybe that's better for the algorithm or whatever, but I wanted to give you guys something more in depth instead of leaving unanswered questions. I am thinking of doing a future video for shortcut actions, but if you are confused about anything that I mentioned here or something was not clear, feel free to let me know in the comments. I will try to help out if I can. Or if you would like me to cover something else in more detail, you can also let me know. I would love to hear how you are using Macrowhisper. All of what I have implemented so far is a result of ideas that I have gathered not only by myself, but from the entire community of users that are into productivity, automation, or AI. So I love to read your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching and for your time. Remember, you can sign up to my newsletter to know more about what I'm up to. Talk to you soon.